Hello, I'm Doreen Ellen Beldotan, and this video will become available for viewing after Shabbat goes out in the westernmost countries, because I think the people that need to hear it the most are Jews that are living in the diaspora, as well as many Jews here in Israel. I live by a basic principle. I don't mess with success. If I see that something is working and bringing about peace, I don't have to add my two agud. Everybody knows something better than I do. And if I see that people are managing well with what they're doing, I don't feel an overweening compulsion to analyze it and critique it. However, when I see something is creating misery, not only do I feel that I have a right to question it, I feel morally enjoined to question it. Neither Rabbinic Judaism nor Christianity have brought the peace into the world that God promises will be if we understand Torah correctly. The Jews have a long history of misery. The Christians have a long history of violence. And so we have to question it. The first thing that people do, the rabbis do, when you question their tradition, is to appeal to authority and say, you think you know Torah better than this illustrious rabbi, that illustrious rabbi, the other illustrious rabbi? And you're supposed to cower in timidity and say, oh no, I wouldn't dare presume. Well, I do dare presume, because none of those famous rabbis brought about peace. And I would say the same thing to the Christians, who would say to me, this little woman thinks she knows more than Jesus? Yeah, I do. Yeah, his failure was pretty dismal. So because Christian error is based on rabbinic error, we need to examine what the rabbis did wrong. The rabbis cannot prove their interpretations. All they can do is appeal to authority. They cannot prove it. They don't have the tradition of knowing how to read Hebrew deeply enough to be able to prove what they're saying. And I'm going to show you some of the proofs of what I'm saying about Mashiach. When we love someone or someones, they are always in our hearts. Everything reminds us of them. If we see a name that is their same name or like their same name, we immediately think of them. They come up in our hearts and pull at our heartstrings in the course of our day. They're never far from our emotions and from our thoughts. The rabbis just don't love our progenitors that way. They feel much closer to the rabbis than to the matriarchs and the patriarchs. They certainly enjoy the benefit of the lineage, of being able to attribute their lineage to the matriarchs and patriarchs. The matriarchs they think about even less than the patriarchs, which is one of their essential errors. They don't really love them in a way where they are reminded of them in everything that they see, because they love them so much. And this is why it astounds me and hurts me profoundly that the rabbis don't see that the title Mashiach, or HaMashiach, with a definite article on it, is contained within the term mishpacha. You can hear it. That means family. It is because the rabbis are not rooted in the holy family of Israel, both because some of them are hangers-on who have kind of like accrued to the Jewish people over the years but aren't really Israel, and some of them because they're just bad sons. They don't love the patriarchs, and so they didn't see that Mashiach is part of mishpacha, family. And not thinking in terms of we all the time, their ego comes into play, and they think that the Mashiach is one particular individual. I am going to show herein, please God, that Mashiach is a family. It is an intergenerational concept. And it is intimately tied to sitting in Israel, to be settled in Israel. The term family is equal to 433. If I subtract Mashiach, which is equal to 358, from 433, I get 75. Is a number of things, but one of the things that I'm going to ask you to focus on right now is that 70, which is the letter ayin in Hebrew, is sod, and it's also which means secret, and it is also avi ve'imi, my father and my mother. So the word family, mishpacha, 433, is therefore sod HaMashiach, the secret of the Messiah, and it is also avi ve'imi HaMashiach, my father and my mother are the Mashiach. This is what the Hebrew word mishpacha means. And everything that talks about blood in Torah is not talking about bloodletting, blood spilling, God forbid. It is talking about family. One of the basic misunderstandings that the rabbis have that took an absolutely grotesque form in Christianity is what's called korban, which is translated horrifically as sacrifice. It comes from the root karev, which is equal to 302, which means that which is close to me. Now 302 is the word sav, written correctly with a sin, not with a samech, as it's originally spelled. And that means a grandparent. The word kerev or karov, karov is someone who's close to me, that which is close to me, a relative, a close relative. But kerev, 302, which is sav, which is a grandparent, grandfather actually, is also ever gufy, ever gufy, which means a member of my body. The expression ever gufy, a member of my body, is shein beit, which is kerev, which is the root of korban, which is translated as sacrifice. It is not sacrifice. It is your actual flesh. The word korban, kufresh beit nun sofit, is equal to 1002, which is the same thing as 3, which is an ot gimel, which is av, which is father. It is also besarcha. It means your flesh. Now, shein beit being ever gufi in the singular, one of the particular members of my body, evrei gufi, the members of my body, is therefore going to be 312. Which is the root yeshav, to be settled. Now, mityashevim are those who are settled in the land. Mityashev is someone who's sitting in the land. Mityashvim is the plural of that. Mityashvim is equal to 1,362. Two of the important substitution values for 1,362 or 363 is perush nachon, which means correct interpretation. And another one equaling 363 is Mashiach. Mashiach is the intergenerational family of those who have interpreted Torah correctly. And those are the people who are said to be settled in the land. I said Avrei Gufi is Shein Yud Beit or Yud Beit Shein or Yud Shein Beit. This is also the root of the word yeshiva, which is an academy of learning. We are talking about the intergenerational family of those who have interpreted Torah, who pass that knowledge down one to the other genetically and with instructionally, with instruction. But it's actually coded into our bodies, into our flesh. Besarcha means your flesh. That is what korban, which is translated, unfortunately, as sacrifice, really means. And so the rabbis, because they went far afield from the family, the intergenerational family, who interpreted Torah correctly, they were exiled. The minute that they are no longer mityashvim, the minute they are no longer those who are settled in the land, they have no knowledge of Mashiach, because HaMashiach is mityashvim. HaMityashvim, those who are settled in the land with the definite article, becomes Meshichai. Now, this is translated into English as the anointed ones. It's not just the anointed ones, it means my messiahs. It is a plural concept in the sense of it being an agglomeration. The higher that we go in learning Torah and getting close to God, the more it becomes all about we and not about me singularly. It becomes all about the Holy Family and understanding that the members of our body are they from whom we inherited these bodies, which are the physical living flesh of the correct learning from generation to generation. So Mashiach can never be an individual. Those who are part of that family are individuated, but because we inherited our bodies and our flesh from those who learned before us, they're always alive within us. They're always alive within us. In fact, one of the substitution values for Mashiach, the Mem and the Shein, which is 340, is also Shildo, which means his skeleton. And then you have Yud-Chet, which means Chai, which is living. His skeleton lives. That I inherited those bones. My bone is that ban, is that ben. I am one of the banot of those who learned correctly. That is my bone. That's the foundation of my body that holds me up. The sound of my blood coursing through my body is the echoes of their learning. When somebody experiences their body as being, having been inherited from those who learned correctly, they are part of that body that is called a Mashiach. And all of those who attained the status of being one of the members of that body are within them, so they are one contained in the whole, and the whole is contained in the one. It cannot, it never was, it never will be one single individual. The rabbis were completely wrong about this. Let's go back to the word mityashvim, which means those who are settled in the land. I said that Yud, Shein, and Bet is Avrei Gufy, the members of my body. And then the letters that are left over are Metim, which is interesting. Most people understand that as meaning those who are dead. It doesn't. It's something very close to being your mates, your friends, your those who are close to you. But if it disturbs you to think of your own body as being dead because you're still stuck in thinking about death in a wrong way, we can turn the letters around and make it into tamim, which means perfect. So mitia shavim, which is HaMashiach, the ones who are settled in the land, which is HaMashiach, is also Avrei Guffi, the members of my body, tamim, are perfect, are pure. And when you get to that level, one has been absorbed into the intergenerational body that extends out over all of the generations. That is called HaMashiach. That is the correct interpretation. Please God, I will show these substitution values. Unfortunately, the rabbis did not understand. And as a result of their misunderstanding, they were driven into the diaspora. Anyone who understands what Mashiach means cannot be in the diaspora. And anyone who is in the diaspora cannot understand what Mashiach means. All of their ruminations are just milling water. I've made a reading spectacle of myself because there are a few points that after I uploaded this I realized I had neglected to mention, and I think that they're important for this discussion. Mashiach equaling 358, which is the same as 1357, is also Kirabenu, or Keravnu. Kirabenu would be that which is close to us. O Keravnu, we made something close to us. It's also within us. And would also therefore become Kol Karov. All of those who are close to us, all of our relatives. Mashiach is Kol Karov, everyone. Now, from this Karev, unfortunately, it was written as sacrifice. It was translated and understood as sacrifice. This has nothing to do with sacrifice. I keep saying there are no sacrifices in Torah. God doesn't want sacrifices. The Nevi'im, the prophets, have said this again and again. God does not require any sacrifices, doesn't want any sacrifices. When God talks about the pleasant smell of the fat, of the flesh, it is not being spoken about an animal being sacrificed. What God finds a pleasant odor is when we act in holiness. When we act in holiness, we are what's called today burning calories. We're burning fat, right? There's a process of metabolism that goes on, and there's also catabolic processes that go on. So it's breaking down and building up. This is what is being talked about. Another one of the substitution values for 358, which is Mashiach, is Pardis David. Pardis is an orchard, but it's actually paradise. That's the way Pardis is actually pronounced, paradise. So it's Pardis David. It's David's paradise. Which means it's also Pardis Agud, the orchard of the agglomeration, the paradise of the agglomeration. That is Mashiach. It is Kol Dor Ba'aretz. Kol Dor Ba'aretz equals 1357, which is the same as 358. That means every generation on earth. Now, sometimes the word dor, which is generation, is spelled with a vav, and sometimes it's spelled without a vav. In this particular case, it's without a vav. It's Kol Dor Ba'aretz Daled Resh, and that's 1357, which is one of the substitution values for Mashiach as well. And another important substitution value which is 1357 as well, is Yeshuv Avotechem, which is the settlement of your fathers, where they are located. Yeshuv is some kind of a settlement, a town, a city. These are all Yeshuvim. These are all settlements of various sizes. So Mashiach is also Yeshuv Avotechem. On a very, very high level, we come to the realization that the land, the settlement itself, and those who were settled in it are one and the same. It's not like Russian dolls, that there are people sitting within the settlement. They are the settlement. They are the actual land itself. Going to HaMashiach, which is Mashiach with a definite article on it, which equals 363, or 1362, it then becomes also Pardis HaAgod, the paradise of the agglomeration. David's name, equaling 14, is the same as Agud, which means agglomeration. The kingdom of David is not, it's not one person, it is an agglomeration. Now that agglomeration is considered one, because the Hebrew word for one, which is echad, is equal to 13. That's one less than David's name. It's haeged, which also means the agglomeration. There is no such thing as one singular one in Hebrew. It's always an agglomeration. The higher you get in holiness, the more it becomes an agglomeration, not an individuation. And finally, HaMashiach 363 or 1362 is also Shlom Beit David, which is the peace of the house of David, the peace of the house of the Agud, of the agglomeration. It's an agglomeration of peace, and that is what's called house. Please God, I hope that this discussion has cleared up some of the obfuscations that the rabbis introduced into the matter of HaMashiach, not understanding it because they were individuated, each one of them actually wanting either to be the head honcho or at least wanting to be, connected to the head honcho. That's not a Torah way of thinking. A Torah thinking, again, it's always about we, not I. It's always about the family of those who have understood Torah correctly and acted in Torah correctly. So Mashiach simply cannot be one individual. Very clearly, Mashiach is called Dor Ba'aretz. By the way, it is also called Dar Be'eretz. This Ba'aretz, this is very important. The word Dar in Hebrew means that who dwells, he who dwells, in the masculine singular. So it's called Dar Be'aretz. Each one who dwells in the land is a substitution value for 358 or 1357. Which is Mashiach. I hope herein I have proven my point that Mashiach is one in the sense of being an intergenerational body that lives in the land and not any one individual. If the rabbis can come up with proofs that I'm wrong, I'm always happy to hear them. I don't want to hear more appeals to authority. I've heard them all. But if you can come up with a proof based on the Hebrew, not on the Talmud, but in the Tanakh, that I'm wrong, I'll be happy to listen to that. Thank you for listening.